Hunters Point that started with the Hunt brothers coming out to survey the land for a real estate development in 1848.
It was during the gold rush.
Out to survey the land for a real estate development in 1848.
It was during the gold rush era, so yeah, 1840s.
So we have 4 stops today. At each stop, Stacey's going to talk about the history of Hunters Point in regards to the Navy operations, and then I'll talk about the cleanup of the legacy contamination from those operations. We'll each give a little talk, and then we'll open it for questions. We do have 4 stops today, so we do kind of need people to get on and off the bus. We're kind of a large crowd, so just be mindful of that, and also kind of stay with the group, no wandering off. And like I said, if you have any questions, please ask. Mindful of that, and also kind of stay with the group, no wandering off. And like I said, if you have any questions, please ask. Stacey, do you want to say any word? Before we get off the bus?
Yeah, sure. Just so you know,
Before we get off the bus?
Yeah, sure. Just so you know, we're going down into what's known as Parcel B. Originally, this was the submarine base area. This building right here, 116, 115, that was actually a submarine training facility, and it used to have part of a submarine on the top of that building. It was a state-of-the-art facility in its day. And unfortunately, they took the submarine off the roof of the building because that would have been cool if they left it. There are artist studios scattered in buildings out here. I will point them out in a little bit. But there's about 150 artists here, and another 150 are in Building 101 where we just picked up the bus. This right here, 50 artists here, and another 150 are in Building 101 where we just picked up the bus. This right here, we're passing on your left, 125, that was the submarine cafeteria, and it is now home to artist studios as well. And we're coming, yeah, we'll talk, to be continued outside.
Here.
No, I come. Oh yeah. We were so excited. We did during open studios. When you came here.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
So Stacey, I think we have everybody on.
Okay. Hi everybody, welcome. How many of you have been to the shipyard before, just so I have an idea? Hey Chris, good to see you, familiar faces. As I said before, this is a submarine base area. Prior submarine base. Here is a little low kind of yellowish building. That was the sports club for the police officers. And it was still in operation in the 80s. A friend of mine, when she started started renting a studio, used to go work out there. It's just kind of interesting.
Wow.
This building over here was the torpedo storage and overhaul facility. And this was a machine shop, outside machine shop where they worked on propellers and whatnot. These were pipe fitter buildings on the side. I can't remember what that one is. That's the pipe fitter building. That's the collapse. But we're stopping here for a building on the side. I can't remember what that one is. That's the pipe fitter building. That's the collapse. But we're stopping here for a building and the remnants of it. So batteries were worked on and stored in this shop, and they ranged from, you know, old batteries from typical car and truck batteries to the remnants of it. So batteries were worked on and stored in this shop, and they ranged from, you know, old batteries from typical car and truck batteries to auxiliary light batteries. Quarters of a ton for one cell of one battery. They're the size of a small bedroom, basically. The battery project was an incident where one of them blew up, and you know, a couple of workers did lose their lives. So they also handled, you know, battery maintenance, electroplating, gyro compass repair and calibration, and also mobile radio repair in this building. Spills and leakage from the charging process inevitably happened in the years, you know, that it was used. It operated from 1946 through 1974, and during that time, approximately 1.8 million gallons of spent acid were drained into the floor drains. 40 million pounds of lead was handled in this building, and an estimated 10,000 gallons of lead, acid-contaminated lead spilled onto the floor in the dock loading area. Acids, chromates, and heavy metals from the plating operation, you know, were discharged through the stormwater system and into acids, chromates, and heavy metals from the plating operation, you know, were discharged through the stormwater system and into the bay. Cyanide waste were generated, and 250,000 gallons of spent electrolytes contaminated with heavy metals were spilled into the floor drains. As a result, these metals remained in the floor, and it was very toxic and dangerous to anybody who would, you know, be working in the building today. So that's why it's gone.
Well, thank you, Stacy. So I'm just going to point out some different things about the cleanup program here. So the cleanup program at Hunters Point has been going on probably for about 25 years. So we're kind of more towards, for this parcel, more towards the tail end of the cleanup program before the property's cleaned up and transferred to the city of San Francisco. Stacy talked about building 123, so you know, this is an industrial properties cleaned up and transferred to the city of San Francisco. Stacy talked about building 123, so you know, this is an industrial area. The industrial operations were no different than what was done in the private sector in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. People weren't as mindful. We didn't have regulations. Materials got spilt. And so what I'm going to talk about today in regards to building 123 is the use of chlorinated solvents. So it's important, you know, we did parts in this building, machines, and parts. Initially, they would use things like gasoline. The thing with gasoline and hot metal parts is fire. And because of that, they switched over to inflammable compounds, things that don't catch on fire, so chlorinated solvents. TCE, trichloroethene, is a common dry cleaner solvent that's no longer used for most places. We use that here for cleaning. The unfortunate thing about chlorinated solvents is they don't catch on fire, but they're toxic. They were handled in the industrial operations. They got on the floor. They got into the ground and the groundwater at this area. So they got on the floor. They got into the ground and the groundwater at this area. So there's a couple things that have been going on here. So there is chlorinated solvents in the groundwater. We're using what's called bioremediation. And bioremediation is using naturally occurring bacteria that in the right conditions will grow up and degrade the contamination. So the common one that's used is Helicobacter, and it's a bacteria that likes to grow in the absence of oxygen. So it's called an anaerobe. That means it doesn't like oxygen. common food is emulsified vegetable oil or lactate. So it feeds off the food, and what it's doing, it's breathing the chlorinated solvent compound, and it's cleaving off the chlorine as it does that, so it detoxifies. And when you set it up correctly, you can completely detoxify chlorine solvents in groundwater. It takes time. But you know, the nice thing about it is in situ. You don't have a lot of infrastructure to maintain. You just continue to monitor your progress, and you look at whether there's enough food in the groundwater for the microbes. And periodically, you have to come out and add more food. You know, companies in the industry would say carbon source. And so they're kind of like us. You know, we need food to survive. They need the food. If they don't have the food, they don't survive. So that is ongoing. We've had a lot of progress in degrading the contaminants in the groundwater. Also, we had contaminant soil. And so we had the chlorine solvents in the contaminant soil, and they're compounds that like to volatilize, that like to go into the air. And so when they're in the ground, they like to be in the airspace between all the different little soil particles. And so it's an equilibrium there. So there's only so much that would go into the air, and the remaining will remain in kind of a liquid form that adheres to the soil particles. And so what the initial remedy was is called soil vapor extraction. Essentially what that is you insert tubes in the ground, vacuum it pulls out those vapors, and then they get compressed into a liquid for disposal. So that went on for a while, but it wasn't performing as we expected. And it was going to take a long time to achieve the cleanup goal. So with discussions with the regulatory agencies, we decided to make a change to accelerate that. And what you're seeing behind me is what we did for excavation. So we decided to excavate the contaminant soil. As part of that, this contaminant soil extended under the building, and a decision was made that we would take the building down to be able to do the work safely and also access the contamination that's under the concrete slab of the building. So first thing we did is, it had been a while since we had collected samples, and we wanted to see how site conditions change, define the limits of excavation. We collected a bunch of soil samples and analyzed to see where the contamination was. We planned our excavation around that. We excavated that soil, and then we collected what's called confirmation samples. You want to confirm that you got the contamination. And so those were collected, and we actually had 2 areas, so we actually came back twice to dig out additional contamination. If you've been out here on a tour in July, you would have seen a 10-foot hole out here. So, and actually there's a Citizens Advisory Committee meeting Monday night at 451 Galvez, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the completion of this soil work. So we excavated out all the contamination. It was disposed off-site, and then we put what's called this durable cover on it. So that's just the black top you see throughout most of the base. So the reason for we have the black top is a lot of the base is fill, and it comes from the bay and the headlands. I call it the headlands up there, and that rock is called serpentinite, and that has naturally occurring high levels of metals and asbestos. And so we do our cleanup under a law called CERCLA. It's super fun. It's a common name for it. And you know, it's decided, you know, we don't clean up below background that's naturally occurring, but because man had taken this rock and crushed it and made the soil that we're standing on, it was decided that that was not naturally occurring since it wasn't here originally. And because of the asbestos and the naturally occurring metals in it, there was an agreement far before my time on this program that we would put this durable cover, also blacktop, on it as a barrier against this naturally occurring asbestos and metals. Separate to that, so we're in the wind down stage. So one of the things is we want to also confirm that we got the contamination. So as I mentioned, that chlorine solvents like to go into the vapor phase. So we're collecting vapor samples from the soil for a year to confirm that we did get all the contamination. And once we've completed that, we've completed the cleanup for this site, for the soil. Separate to that, you see we still have some open trenches over here, and you see what's called radiological screening work. rescreen the soil. So the soil comes out of the trench unit, it goes onto a pad, it gets laid out thickness no thicker than 9 inches. And then there's what's called a sodium iodide detector. So it's an instrument that you have a certain pace that you walk over, and it can detect radiological contamination. And so as you're walking with it, there's a certain pace that you go. When you're coming towards contamination, you start making a noise. You start having a beeping signal, and you can triangulate where that is. Basically, that beeping signal will spike when you're on top of it. And so when the surveyor identifies one of those, they put a flag down for somebody to come back and investigate it. Parcel B, to date, we've only had a glass shard the size of a pea was found and identified as radioactive. And so it's been removed and disposed of, and there was an agreement in our work plan. We originally would do 1/3 of the trench units on these pads and then do in situ sampling for the remaining 2/3. Because of the finding of the glass shard, the decision was made to do 100% excavation of all the trench units on parcel B. So behind you, you see radiological screening yards. So the soil gets put down, it's no thicker than 9 inches. They do the scan on it. They analyze the scan data to see if there's any anomalies in it. They should go back and investigate. They also listen for anomalies. They put flags down, come back and investigate that. And then there's a random sampling of samples across the entire RSY that go to a laboratory for analysis. That takes 21 days. Across the entire RSY that go to a laboratory for analysis. That takes 21 days. And then it goes through validation, and then the data to see if there's any information. We haven't been finding any. And separate to this, we have oversight from the U.S. EPA and the California Department of Public Health with support from the Department of Toxic Substances Control. They collect their own set of samples to analyze independent, and then on top of that, we also have a third-party QC contract. They collect their own set of samples to analyze independent, and then on top of that, we also have a third-party QC contractor coming out, checking on the contractor doing the work, make sure they're doing it in accordance. On parcel B, we're actually going to be in parcel G later at the last stop of the tour. We've actually completed that work over there. And with that,
What will be built here?
I honestly don't know. So the Navy's responsibility is to complete the cleanup and then transfer to the city the property to. When I say the city, I actually mean the Office of Community Investment and Infrastructure. It's a local reuse agency, and they're related to the city of San Francisco. I think legislatively they're kind of set up as independent. I don't really understand how, because they'll say they're not a city agency. Anyway, it gets transferred to the city, and then the city has a redevelopment plan for the base, and then Lennar 5 Points was selected as the developer. So basically we will transfer it to the city, and the city works with their developer to redevelop the property. I believe their redevelopment plan is on OCII's website.
I can just say that OCII is the successor agency to the redevelopment agency. They were established just to receive all the existing contractual obligations of the redevelopment agency when Jerry Brown abolished them statewide for the purpose of all the projects in San Francisco. So they maintain those ongoing relationships.
The buck stops there. The buck stops there.
Yes.
So there are flags there, nice and pink and baby.
The buck stops there.
Yes.
So there are flags there, nice and pink and baby blue, very pretty. What does it mean? Have they found something? So this is where they're scanning, right? Just kind of, this is what you've laid out, the soil.
Yeah,
9 inches or less.
I'm assuming what I'm looking at is they found something, they came back, and they found what it is. Sometimes what they find is all the materials have some naturally occurring level of radioactivity in it. And sometimes what they'll come back and typically find that maybe a piece of asphalt or some other material. So to date, on this parcel, the only thing that's radioactive that has been found was that glass shard that was the size of a pea.
On this lot here?
I'm not sure where it was found.
I don't think it was.
think it was.
Okay.
I think it was.
I think it was out.
I think it was further over. So where you see, we'll talk. Cecil will talk about that brick building. That's a pump house for one of the dry docks. I believe it's found over in that area over there. There's on our website fact sheets about the mining. I believe it's found over in that area over there. There's on our website fact sheets about the mining process for the trenching there. So there's 2 fact sheets on our website under timely topics that discuss what was found and how we move forward from that.
So will you be covering it with asphalt like you did here?
Yeah, so what they do is once the retesting is complete and everyone agrees that there's no contamination in it, it goes back to the trench unit it came from.
You're talking about this right here.
Yes.
Yeah, the whole big
So
thing.
if they're testing it, tell me why there's no sprinkler system.
So we have a dust management plan, and what they do is they spray soil affixants on top of them. It forms like a crust, and that helps manage the dust.
It manage
Well,
to a certain extent.
I mean, do you see any dust today with this wind?
Let me when we're talking about 2.5 particulate matter, you understand what that is, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we have a lot of wind out here, and when it gets to 2.5 particulate matter, it's very fine. It's like finer than your hair. You can't see it, and you still breathe it in, and it still gets into your lungs. So to prevent that, we must water it. Let me ask you guys something. Anybody know what a serpentine rock is here? How many people? Oh, you know what it is then. So you know what that pile is right there. You know what it does. Do anybody know what it does? What is it? Can anybody tell me?
Gives you asbestos. He just said so.
Yeah, okay, here. So it's a lot of that. We got a lot of that here. And so by the wind blowing and you disturbing that, right? And people who live here on a regular basis, we talk about all types of pulmonary disease, not only with the radiation, but we also talking about the serpentine rock. That's very contaminated. It can affect us. So that's why I'm asking. If we are aware of that and we see that, right? The wind blows hard here. I've been here my whole entire life, man. Blowing right up here. It blows hard. So the least we can do is just like when PG&E tore it down, they had a sprinkler system there constantly on a daily basis. So we can do the same thing because it carries. It's gonna carry.
So for all our soil movement activities, we have a dust management plan that's implemented whenever there's soil movement and when we have areas like this.
Can I find out who they are?
And we also post our dust monitoring reports quarterly on our websites. And a recent thing is we do real-time dust monitoring for PM10, and we have started posting that every 2 weeks on our website.
And also,
Only 10, not 2.5.
Not 2.5.
from an artist's perspective, if you look at how close one of our studio buildings is to this, we are engaged with the Navy constantly about the air monitoring and what the results are and all of that. I mean, it's really important to us whenever this sort of thing happens. So,
So we have
based on what I
USEPA,
know.
we have USEPA that works with us on these dust issues. We review the data with them weekly, and they're satisfied with our management program.
Okay, but who is doing the management? What's the agency or the group, the organization that's doing the dust management?
So the contractor has air monitoring stations as part of their work.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Where they set up at? You don't know where they're at?
Don't know at the moment.
Michael, okay, we probably need to get moving. You had one question. Oh, I just said the broad thing I all know about, and I don't quite. So, you want to talk about that on
I'll talk about it briefly because I'll say I've only been on the program for 2.5 years, so I don't know all the ins and outs. But the way I understand it is when they were doing the retesting in the soil from the sewer lines and storm lines, there was an evaluation of the data, and multiple people will claim they discovered it. But the bottom line is there was data anomalies that couldn't be justified, and there was the contractor will say it has a different opinion, but there was an evaluation and there was
I don't see that 2.5.
determined to be fraud.
Listen to this.
And And because of
When was
that,
That's why I got asked.
2017.
Okay.
Tetra Tech?
And there was a long discussion between the Navy and the agencies in the city about a path forward from there, and so a work plan was developed to do retesting of all that contractor's work on Hunters Point. So it includes buildings and the trench units.
And just to be clear, 2 guys went to jail for the contractor. They were found guilty and they went to jail. 2 managers.
And you know what? I told them that. I told them.
Google Tetra Tech.
I know those guys.
Tetra Tech.
Doing it when I was on the restoration
It goes to a facility that
I
can
told
handle
them
it.
they were wicked. I saw what they were doing.
Little YouTube, little Google. You'll get it.
I'm on it.
Oh, also that. I'm in this seat.
Is this one?
Right here, I think.
You sure? Because
Yeah.
you got your paper.
Well, I grabbed one from the front.
Oh, you sure it's right here?
I wasn't sure if this was even mine to grab.
Yeah, he also got called in to go do cleanup.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And just you can't park your trucks here because
A whole lot of flags.
You an A's fan?
I used to work for them for 6 years
it's like what do you
until they abandoned us and betrayed us all.
That's been a long time coming.
It was, man. I joined the team when we were making the wild card back to back, and then they just folded and just it was a slow death.
Considering baseball is in serious decline.
I'm trying to see if we can get to 80 wins this season because I don't think we're making the playoffs.
So we're going to be leaving parcel B right now, just a minute. And then we're going to come up into parcel C. And the first thing we're going to hit once we cross that line is the brick pump house buildings we were talking about. And I'll wait until you can see them better.
Aren't they the oldest ones, Stacy?
That they are.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
about to tell you all that.
Too historic.
Yep. So again, this is on your right is the outside machine shop, shop 38. Also stacked against the side of the building, you'll see these blocks here. Those are the keel blocks that would go in the bottom of the dry dock, and they would be arranged in a configuration depending on the type of ship. Stacked against the side of the building, you'll see these blocks here. Those are the keel blocks that would go in the bottom of the dry dock, and they would be arranged in a configuration depending on the type of ship. It would be set down on these keel blocks. They pump the water out, and then they can put in the bottoms of the ships. So that's what you see there stacked up. So here's the brick pump house buildings, and this is dry dock number 3 is the first one, and dry dock number 2 is to the if you're facing that way, I think. Anyway, this whole area dates to 1867. That's when the first dry docks were built. It was a commercial shipyard or dry dock repair facility, and the existence of these 2 dry docks really helped dry dock repair facility, and the existence of these 2 dry docks really helped put the state of California on the map because they were the first and largest dry dock repair facility on the West Coast for many, many years. The engineer for these 2 dry docks was Howard C. Holmes, who is known for designing complex cable car systems. And so the whole hub of the cable cars at Mason Street, that was complex cable car systems. And so the whole hub of the cable cars at Mason Street, that was designed also by the same engineer. We're passing right now what used to be the Anchor coffee shop. and it was also the main bus stop to leave the shipyard for enlisted men. And we're going to get off here and I'll continue then. Oh yeah, so when you get off the bus, go behind the bus to the corner where the fence is, and you'll see 3 buildings from that side.
So are all these buildings irradiated or something? Asbestos lined or something?
No, they're all asbestos lined, probably.
Okay.
But technically, I have to look up each building to tell you exactly if it, to what extent.
These were the manufacturing.
I'm going to tell you all of that once we get together here. Yep.
I'm in grad school at USF for public administration.
Oh, awesome.
And I despise the plan that is currently active. I want to rip it up and bring back manufacturing and shipbuilding and ship repair because we need it.
I want these to be saved.
And also trade operations, like that ship right out there. We could bring it right over to the dry dock.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, when everything's fixed, of course.
Yes, exactly. Once it's all clean, it's safe.
I'm gonna keep bugging them. I'm gonna make them fix it so we can make money. No housing, more money. Business. Because this.
All right, let's come on over here, please.
Former pride of the U.S. Navy
Again,
right
the faster we go, the more we're going to see again. And we'll cut out of stop. Not yet. We don't know for sure. So this again is parcel C, and where we're standing is the original industrial heart of the shipyard. These were all put in place, as part of World War II. So the first building, industrial building built by the Navy when they seized control of the shipyard at the onset of World War II, 11 days after Pearl Harbor, for those you don't know, is when the Navy seized control of the shipyard. This building, 231, is the inside machine shop. This is the first machine shop built by the Navy. Most of the industrial heavy work was done in there. Machining of, ship parts and all kinds of stuff in there. They basically had swimming pools full of solvents to clean the ship parts because they were so huge. On the top floor is a mold loft. So that's where, they would design and lay out the templates. They had wood templates for all the ship parts, and then they would send them down to the machine shop to be stamped up. This building here is one of the most unique treasures of the shipyard. It is building 253, which was the optical and ordnance shop, and it is all glass. 80% of the walls and roof are made out of inch-thick corrugated glass. It was used to calibrate submarine periscopes and gun scopes for the ships, and it's on the waterfront. It's got a beautiful view on the other side, and they could calibrate the periscopes by focusing on all different parts of the Bay Area from that vantage point. It has, I've seen, there's a video by a guy named Rusty Jaw on Vimeo, if you ever get a chance to look it up. And he goes inside the building, and it's an interior shot of the building, and the light quality in there is exquisite. It's got the best view of any men's room I've ever seen in my life. It's like a whole row of urinals and a floor-to-ceiling glass wall next to you with an incredible view. It's beautiful. It had the largest escalator in the world inside in its day. It was built in 1947, designed by Ernest J. Kump and engineered by Mark Falk. And it was awarded as the best example of industrial architecture in 1948 when it was opened. It is one of a kind. Nothing like this building exists anywhere in the world. If there's any pitch I could say to save a building, this one is one that is not, it's not protected at all. This here was the 231, 281, which is the Electronics Weapons Precision Facility, Machine Shop, and Antenna Repair. This building was actually occupied by the Defense Logistics Agency, and it was part of the Department of the Defense. So it was technically, when it was in operation, was not under Navy jurisdiction. As a result, I don't find much of any information on what actually went on in there because it was Department of Defense, all classified. So that's all I know.
Big stuff.
And big stuff. I mean, look at the scale. I mean, and this is one thing on this tour that I want you just to pay attention to. I mean, how can you not? The scale of the work that went on here, the scale of these buildings, it's amazing. It really blows my mind, in this building especially. After the Navy left in 1974, they leased the shipyard to AAA Machine Shop, and they in turn leased this to a filmmaking studio, and the movie James and the Giant Peach was filmed in here. There was also a sound stage in another building, which I'll show you later on. Again, that's the Anchor Coffee Shop. That's the sheet metal shop that Michael will address. And again, there was the established, commercial shipyard, public buildings. They are protected. And maybe also made a pitch to expand that to a larger district, which would include this building here, the glass building, and the machine shop. It was never done, but I would like to make a pitch for it. Last minute, but you never know.
1-800-TRUMP.
If they retain these buildings, in addition to the brick buildings, then you really would have a representation of the scope of work that went on here from, World War II all the way up through the Cold War. So that's my 2 cents.
And what's the decision on keeping it? Like, who's making the decision that's historic?
It was the Navy that made a pitch for it, but nobody picked it up. They didn't follow through. And as far as I know, what the city's concerned, they're terrible. And it's a shame. I mean, you got to find a use for them. They're huge, and they need a lot of work. But yeah, and to have a representation of what went on here, this place is totally historic.
Thank you, Stacey. So there's just a few things I want to point out here. So again, you see, we have Parcel C, we have the retesting program for where the former steam sewer lines and stormwater lines were, and so that's why you see these trenches. You may ask why is there weeds growing in it. So we've had an issue with the contractor, and so the work has kind of been on hold for a while. We're getting it restarted, so that's kind of why you're seeing that. Bacteria to degrade the contamination in situ. The building behind it is a sheet metal shop. Demo and radiological impact of building performance achieved. Glass palace is something that's considered historical use. So we'll talk about what that's about later. And
So just a quick question. So since, you know, there's already natural wildlife, the weeds that are growing, what is the opposition to phytoremediation of the trenches while we're waiting for other things to happen? So that way the plants, like you mentioned, the bacteria, but there's also plants that can do the same thing and heal the trenches while we're waiting for further work to be done.
So I'm not a phytoremediation expert. So take what I say based on my limited knowledge. So I've looked at phytoremediation for sites before. Mustard is the one that's the plant is commonly used. There are plants that do hyperaccumulation of metals. It takes time. So parcel G is scheduled for transfer, or I should say cleanup completion at the end of 28. Parcel B, which is where we were originally, that cleanup is scheduled for completion in 2030. Cleanup of plants is not quick. You know, there's also a question of how effective with the contamination that we have. You know, some of the issues that we have in this facility is, you know, we can clear to a certain depth, whether there's radioluminescent tiles and radiological objects, but to a certain depth, technology to clear. So there are land use controls for areas where that could be a potential problem for future development. So when they do that redevelopment, they're aware of the issue and have to manage for it. So there are uses. Fungi also is used in remediation. So it's a matter of, does it work for the contaminants that are there? I mean, we talked about that a lot of the material that the base is made from is serpentinites, which has some naturally occurring metals in it, I think, and asbestos. I mean, the plants aren't going to take up the asbestos. So does phytoremediation, you know, what's the timeline for it? My understanding, it also is usually pretty limited for the most part to maybe the upper foot, 2 foot, depending on the soil. You know, interesting sidebar to this is people have used poplars, trees,
Yes.
to remediate, contaminate groundwater. I've seen that used before as a technique. So the question is it going to be effective? What's the time frame? And then when the plants take up the contamination, what are you going to do with them? Because now the plants have the contamination, they got to be disposed of hazardous waste potentially. So,
Probably the same place you're going to take the rest of the stuff.
right. So but you have to manage it, and then, you know, there's a question on this space. You know, it's a large facility. Copper prices have gone up, and so we have a problem with copper scrappers coming on the base. And, you know, we have people that intentionally come on the base to look for copper. So that's the reason why you see a lot of these fences, is to kind of try and protect people from like falling into trenches that particularly they don't belong on the base. So it's a really interesting, neat technology for cleanup. You know, when we do our cleanups, we do what's called a feasibility study, and we look at the contaminants. We look at a range of potential technologies or techniques to clean it up, and it goes through this evaluation process. And in CERCLA there is 9 criteria. It's called the NCP 9 criteria, the National Contingency in Oil and Hazardous Substances Plan, NCP for short. So when we select a remedy, we go, as part of that process, we evaluate against the 9 criteria. So there's what's called threshold criteria. The remedy has to be protective of human health and environment, and it has to comply with what's called ARARs, which are regulations that apply to cleanup. So it's groundwater, you may be looking at the Safe Drinking Water Act, other things. There's other regulations you look at. So if you build those together, you also look at risk, and then also you look at feasibility, long-term, short-term feasibility, cost, standard, acceptance, leaving out a couple, but there's 9. And so we go through an evaluation. It's a trade-off between those. And, you know, we consult with the regulatory agencies and identify what's called a preferred alternative and present that to the public and the regulatory agencies and get their input. And sometimes we may change it. Sometimes everybody's in agreement that we pick the best path forward, and then we go forward and implement that. So the record decision, which memorializes up in a manner everyone's agreed to and get done, like for parcel B in 2030, to support the transfer to the city. And, you know, it's been a long time getting this moving forward, and people want to get the property back into productive reuse.
Right.
I will say that from a plan perspective, parcel E2, we have what's called an ET cap, an evapotranspirative cap. So we've got a 10-foot soil layer on there, and you do a water balance. So when it rains, you have the plant, so the soil will soak up the water, and the plants will uptake it to keep the water from actually getting to the landfill material.
What I would recommend for you with regards to the depth issue, vetiver grass, which has 12-foot roots, and sunflowers, which have been used in Ukraine, Chernobyl, Fukushima, Japan, and have been tested on water to be able to take up radioactive contaminants out of the water as well. Have been tested on water to be able to take up radioactive contaminants out of the water as well. Highly recommend.
But I need to get
Another history point to bring out as we walk back to the bus is the tower on top of this building here. That is the pipe fitter shop. But the tower was actually used, when we get back on the bus, we're going to pass drydock number 4, which is where they had the aircraft carriers when they came in.
Yes.
And that tower was what they used to calibrate the radar on the ships when they were in drydock, because otherwise they would have to pull them out of drydock, turn them around, and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So they used this device instead.
Nice. So I noticed that dry docks 3 and 4 still have the dry dock caps inside them. 2 and 3. So the door, the caisson, yes. So my question, because I understand that the bottom is irradiated from when they brought in the Bikini Atoll ships.
As far as I know, that's been cleaned up, but I really can't.
The bottom is irradiated from when they brought in the Bikini Atoll ships.
As far as I know, that's been cleaned up, but I really can't totally.
There's never consistent information, but still, if there's any contamination whatsoever that would prevent us from using the dry dock specifically, we should cap it and then drain it so that way we could put the phyto plants to heal it or whatever. I don't think whatever toxins he's talking about are going to do it, but.
The HRA, the historical or radiological assessment, that kind of gives you the history of what's impacted and what's been cleaned up or not. So that compared, with Michael's information, as far as I know, those 2 dry docks though are no longer operational, as far as I know. Dry dock number 4, maybe, but I'm not sure.
There's always a way. Well, I have 5. I'm going to do my best to capture photo and video with what I have left and whatever we can capture here. This is not going to be the last time we're going to be at this shipyard. It's the first but not the last. So still a lot to see, but I can't have the live feed on, otherwise I'm just going to have a dead phone. So Pearci Bastiany at the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard here with you checking out.